سيداتي سادتي، من فضلكم رحبوا معنا مراسل CNN موني سامويل بيورك وضيفه الرئيس والمدير التنفيذي لأريان سبيس ستيفن إسرائيل.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back CNN Money business correspondent Samuel Berg and his guest Stéphane Israël, Chairman and CEO Ariane Space.
Good afternoon. I'm Samuel Burke. I'm CNN's technology and business correspondent, and Stéphane Israël, thank you so much for joining me on stage for this panel. I just want to start because I know during this presentation, a lot of people are going to be checking their phones. Don't worry, I know we all do it while people are talking, but I want to know if you agree with me, that when people think of technology nowadays, they think of the phone. They don't think of space, and of course, you're CEO and chairman of a space company. So do you feel you've been left behind by the iPhone?
I would not exactly say that. I think the time for innovation in the space business is not exactly the same as in, for instance, the mobile business, because we are on long-term programs, long-term technology, and it is true that if you consider civil aerospace, civil aircraft, you see that since 50 years, you have had more evolutions than revolutions. But I think it's very important to understand that, because if in our business, the innovation is more going step by step, evolution by evolution, it is because reliability is absolutely key. When you take an airplane, you prefer this airplane to be safe. When you are a satellite or when you are an astronaut and you use a rocket, you prefer this rocket to be safe. And it is true that it has a consequence, the fact that we prefer to go for evolutions and revolution when it comes to technology, because reliability first.
But do you think that people sitting in the audience today are aspiring to work more for an Apple and a Google than they are maybe a SpaceX or a company like yours?
I think space is more and more exciting, because space, some decades ago, it was more linked to some rivalry between the US and USSR. But now we are entering in a new world where you will have more and more entrepreneurs when it comes to space, and where space is going to open new perspectives. I give you just one example. A big question for us will be how space is going to part to the answer for the willingness to have global connectivity, full access to internet everywhere, every time in the world. We all know that if you only rely on terrestrial solutions, it will never be possible to connect all the mankind. And we know that satellites could here be a real game changer. And I think for people in this room, for students, it is very exciting to have the feeling that maybe you could be part of this new frontier, which is to kill the digital divide.
How much of the internet that we use today on a day-by-day basis is actually coming from space?
Today, it is very limited, because when our satellites are used, it is more for broadcast, for TV channels, and for broadband and internet access. But things are changing, because there is such a big demand for connectivity, for mobility, that only satellites will help to address this demand. When you are in a plane, and I was in a plane yesterday, I had internet on board, and it was thanks to satellites.
From where to where?
From Paris to Riyadh, to
Okay,
Abu Dhabi.
okay.
I do not quote the name of the company, but
I did not have Wi-Fi on
Yes.
my flights, and I
Yes,
was quite upset.
It was
I
a
need that
company
now.
not far from Riyadh, I must say. And when you have internet access in the plane, which is something valuable, it is through satellites.
But you have Mark Zuckerberg, for example, and Facebook and Google all looking at different ways to get internet, not from land, not from satellite, but from balloons, actually. We're seeing that. Do you think that satellites are much more promising?
Yes,
And
I think so.
not just because you work for a space company?
Maybe I am a bit biased, but I think with balloon you have less possibility to cover, less stability. A satellite has one big advantage. When it's a geostationary satellite, you can cover a huge number of territories. When it's a low Earth orbit satellite, you have constellations of satellites, and we have big projects here which are also able to cover a huge part of the world. So definitely the value of the satellite will be better than balloon. And you speak about Facebook, you know that Facebook had invested in satellite. Unfortunately, they have had a mishap, but it shows that now more and more players from the Silicon Valley are turning to space, and this is also new.
Before we get into some of the more detailed points about your industry, for people who are out here today and are interested in jobs and moving up in their career, what type of characteristics is your company looking for in this industry? What type of education background, what type of resume are you hoping to see if somebody here wants to apply to your company?
Yes, so definitely we need strong engineering capability, strong program management capability, because at the end of the day, what we must do is to handle very complex program. When you decide a new launcher, for instance, Ariane 6, which will be the launcher of the future for us, it is a program which is going to happen during 4 or 5 years. We need very strong management, program management skills. So we need scientific engineering background. But not only, because when it comes to selling the rocket, when it comes to making communications, then we can open the skills we need. So I would say 70% of our employees have a technical engineering background, 30% have more sales and marketing background. Some of them are also coming from finance, which is more and more important, legal. So we have a wide range of competencies which matter for us, but basically the art of the game is made of engineering and program management capability.
Everywhere that I'm going today, when I talk to men, when I talk to women, I hear people talking about Saudi 2030. It's very clear what the goals of the government here are in terms of diversifying, not just having money in oil, also having money in tech. But it's interesting, I come from the United States, and even though I don't live there, I hear from people so often, and you heard in this election as well, people talking about government interfering with tech, that sometimes government gets in the way, there's too much regulation. And it's interesting because when you think back on space, you think of government. You think of NASA, for example, and the equivalent there in the then USSR, now Russia. So I'm interested where you think government plays a role in tech, because now we have so many more private players like SpaceX, owned by Elon Musk, your company. So do you see government getting in the way of tech, or do you see it as being a help?
If I may, we are in Riyadh, so I would like to say a word on Saudi Arabia in space. You know, in Riyadh, you have the headquarters of Arabsat, which is the satellite operator of the Arabic League. And Arabsat is a very strong player. Arabsat has many satellites in operations. And Arianespace, we happen to have launched 9 satellites for Arabsat, and we will have one more. So what I want to say is that already there is here in Riyadh a very strong player in this community of satellite operator. After, I think space is definitely a mix of public funding, public money, and private capabilities, private ambitions. Because in our business, if you do not have governments as customers, it is very difficult. You have referred to entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley, such as SpaceX. If you take the order book of SpaceX, 2/3 is made by NASA, by US Air Force, by NOAA. So definitely governments need to be behind. If you take Arianespace, we are going for Ariane 6, the rocket will be 80% funded by governments through the European Space Agency, but after it will be our responsibility to sell it on the market. So we need a good mix between real governmental ambition for space and real entrepreneur and private capabilities. I think it's a mix.
So you like them as partners and customers?
We need governments to be partners, yes, but also customers. We need them to buy a rocket because otherwise, if you do not have an anchor customer, it's difficult to be successful when you go to the full open market, definitely.
We're talking so much about Saudi Arabia in 2030, so I'm curious where you see space in 2030, though we've already talked about satellites, and Saudi Arabia's role in space in 2030.
So when it comes to space in 2030, I think there will be many changes. One changes is the Mars ambition. We speak a lot about Mars, and definitely it's very motivating for...
This is all we're speaking about nowadays. Every time I
Yes.
talk to someone in space or any type of space explorer, Mars, 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 Mars.
Exactly. You know, there was a former president of France who was saying that everyone was speaking about Europe, 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 and after Europe was not so strong. So
Maybe
Mars,
maybe
Mars,
Mars will be easier
No,
to...
not sure. And this is the point I would like to make. I'm not sure that we should say that Mars is the big, big ambition, because it will cost a huge amount of money to go to Mars. And to be honest, I doubt that there will be ever colonization of Mars. Just think seriously about it. Do you really think that in 1 century, 2,000 people will be living on Mars? I doubt it will be the case. Mars exploration, maybe more through robotic, yes. But this obsession of Mars, I think, can be questioned. After, we will have a second area which is very promising, which is to better understand life on Earth and to know whether there is life in other planets, other galaxies. This is all the question of exploration of exoplanet through big telescope, and I think it will be very promising.
So you think we'll find another planet before we ever get a human on Mars?
I think maybe it is more interesting to try to understand whether there is some life elsewhere. Then
Do you think there is life elsewhere? Would you
I
bet
say
your money on it?
I would bet yes.
Yeah?
Yes, definitely, because you know the cosmos is so big that I do not see why we would have life only on Earth. I do not say we will discover it. I do not say we are going to speak with these people, but definitely from a pure theoretical point of view, I think there is great chance that there is life elsewhere. After we have all new activities which could be linked to space, we could have in low Earth orbit commercial activities in space. It's not impossible. We know that some entrepreneurs are dreaming of hotels in space. We know that some people are dreaming about exploiting some resources in space. This is what we call space mining. And last but not least, I think our satellites are going to be really more and more helpful for our daily life. And here I come back to connectivity. I think we will enter in a world where we will have more and more satellites in orbit for an easier life on Earth. And this is important.
How realistic is space mining? I mean, some places are trying to move out of mining. I mean, you think about the move out of oil here, not completely, but it's a type of mining. Do you really think that there's short-term potential for mining products from space and bringing them back down here?
What I would say, I'm not sure that we will have oil on space, so I think it's better to
stay here in
better
Saudi.
to stay in the region. I think you are at the right place. But when it comes to other resources, I think space mining can be serious. What is very interesting in Europe, the country which pushes the most for space mining is Luxembourg.
Luxembourg.
And
Really?
it is interesting because Luxembourg happens to have a very big satellite operator, SES, which is a very strong player, the second player in the world. So it is a small country, but with already huge satellite operator capabilities. And the Prime Minister of Luxembourg gave 2 days ago a press conference where he said we are very serious about space mining and we hope that it will happen one day. I think it is more maybe a vision than a reality, but it is something valuable.
If you had to bet, what year do you think that could happen? I won't call you up in 10 years, but when do you think that is a feasible?
I would say more 2050s and 2030.
2050 before.
This is more what I see. And I think since before that, we will have more and more satellites for connectivity, mobility. And here for Saudi Arabia, I think Saudi Arabia will be part of this game. After, there is a question which is important for the kingdom, which is, will Saudi Arabia have an autonomous access to space? And I think this is a very valuable question. We will see how this will evolve.
Who do you see as the leader in terms of space in the Middle East?
Now, you know, I
You're
want
going
to
to
have,
say Saudi Arabia.
I want to have many friends, so I will not answer this question.
I'm interested to see what you think about Elon Musk and SpaceX. It seems like this is the company that we're talking about most. And I said there's been this division between space and technology, but he seems like one of the people who's bringing it together, making space a little bit more modern sounding, a little bit more techy. So do you think he's making a positive contribution to space?
I think Elon Musk has stimulated competition, and competition is very good because when you have more competition, you change, you innovate more, you want to reduce the cost. So this is very positive. After, I think it's important to understand that the different players do not have exactly the same philosophy. And this refers to what we have said at the beginning of this speech. For Elon Musk, there is a willingness to innovate as hell, and to change always his rocket, and there is a lack, I think, of stability. On our side, in Arianespace, we are more conservative, I must say, because we know that space has many risks. We know that the top priority of our customers is to make sure that we are going to reach the proper orbit safely. And as a result, we have always decided to be more cautious. I do not say it is better. I'm not here to give any lesson, but I think there is a little bit here a difference of way of envisaging our business. We are ready to innovate, but we think that evolution is better than revolution when it comes to rocket. It's also the case for satellites. When you see satellite technology, they have evolved. Now you have more electric propulsion, for instance, but it's more evolution than revolution. You speak about Musk, but there is not only Musk, there is Jeff Bezos.
Well, before you
Maybe
go there,
it's the next question.
Yeah,
Bezos.
well, I
Okay.
wanted to ask you, it used to be before big businessmen bought newspapers. Sometimes they had no interest in the news, but it was seen as kind of a mark of pride if you had enough money to own and maybe even control a newspaper. Now you have Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, who you just mentioned, investing into space. So do you, as well as you could say Mark Zuckerberg, and to a certain extent Google, so do you think that those are legitimate technology investments, or maybe just showing off muscle in a way that I can do this and I have the money to do it, or a bit of both?
No, I think if you have so much money invested now in space in the US, it is because you have a strong investment from the US government in space. Because when you are in the Silicon Valley and when you say, okay, I'm going to put some money in a rocket, you can have the hope to have NASA, US Air Force as an anchor customer. So I think it's not only to show some strengths and just to be part of something which makes a lot of people dreaming. It is because in the US, you have a huge amount of public money which is dedicated to space. So this is very stimulating for entrepreneurs because they can have the hope to have their government as strong customers. And to be honest, this is what we would need more in Europe. Europe has more limited ambition. We are very good because when it comes to satellite and launcher, we are making the race ahead, but we do not have the same level of public investment.
I'm curious to see what you think about cooperation between governments in terms of space. It used to be a battle. Again, we referenced the United States versus the then USSR. Do you think that space still represents that, or is there maybe more cooperation between governments than before?
I think space is definitely a world, a community of cooperation. And if you take, for instance, geopolitics today, you know that there has been some tensions between Russia and some countries, but for instance, space has never been part of these tensions. And the cooperation between Russia, US, Europe has always been very good. I give you an example. In 2 or 3 days, there will be a French astronaut which will be sent to the International Space Station by a Soyuz. And us, Arianespace, we have a very strong cooperation with Roscosmos, and we launched some Soyuz rockets from Guyana. I give you the example of Arabsat. Arabsat is an operator with all Arabic countries as shareholders, which is also an example of strong cooperation. And definitely, we need this cooperation to make some progress in space. In space, there is no boundaries, and space is very important for the global peace, I think, in the world,
And
definitely.
where do the Chinese fit in space? We hear about them more often, I feel like. We're hearing headlines from them. So where would you put them in the list of competitors in some sense?
China has a very strong space program. They have very strong ambitions. You know, they want to go to the moon, which has only been done by Americans up to now. In terms of commercial, they have a limited part of the business because there is a US regulation which forbids China from launching any satellite with a US component. So due to this regulation, it's more complex for China to enter in the market, and so China must make a turnkey proposal with satellite and rocket. Usually customers prefer to share the cake between one country or one player for satellite and other for rocket or different players. And so here China has some limitation when it comes to entering the market, but they have a very strong program and they have very strong capabilities. They are definitely a big player when it comes to space.
My last question to you, we have just less than a minute left. Where are you investing the most in your company? Where do you see the quickest return in your money, the biggest growth?
No, but definitely we are now investing for a new rocket because we need to come on the market in 2020 with a rocket which would be cheaper. So this is where we are investing.
And when
now.
you say rocket, a rocket for what type of purposes?
To launch satellites. All kinds of satellites. It will be Ariane 6, and we hope that we will have as many success with Ariane 6 as we have had with Ariane 5. And just before conclusion, if I may, we need this part of the audience because in our business, we lack some women, and we need women coming in program management, in engineering capabilities. Definitely the business is open to all women talents, so we do not need only this part of the audience, but also the other part.
You
we
need
both.
Stefan Israel, Chairman and CEO of Arianespace, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to stay up on stage because I'm also moderating our next panel.